Tar Baby, Cassette 8.
He asked her if she would mind staying at Soldier's house with his wife, Ellen, while he went to see his father. J. Dean demurred. She had run out of conversation with Ellen 10 minutes after it started, but Son urged her, saying he had not seen Old Man in 8 years, and that he didn't want to bring someone his father didn't know into his house the first time they met in all that time. Could she understand that? She said yes, out in Soldier's yard near the mimosa, but she didn't understand at all, no more than she understood the language he was using when he talked to Soldier and Drake and Ellen and the others who stopped by. No more than she could understand or accept her being shunted off with Ellen and the children, while the men grouped on the porch, and after a greeting, ignored her. Or why he seemed so shocked and grateful at the same time by news that some woman named Brown, Sarah or Sally or Sadie, from the way they pronounced it, she couldn't tell, was dead. But she agreed. God, Elo. He left her there and walked alone to the house he was born in. The yellow brick front looked tiny. It had seemed so large and sturdy compared to the Sutterfield shack he and Cheyenne had, the one he drove a car through. It wasn't as big as Undine's kitchen. The door was unlocked, but no one was home. In the kitchen, a pepper pot was simmering, so he knew Old Man wasn't far and wouldn't be long. His father, Franklin G. Green, had called Old Man since he was 7 years old, and when he grew up, got married, had a baby boy, the baby was called Old Man's Son, until the second child was born, and the first became simply Son. They all used to be here, all of them. Horace, who lived in Gainesville, Frank G., who died in Korea, his sister Francine, who was in a mental home in Jacksonville, and the baby girl Porky Green, who still lived in Elo, so Soldier said, but went to Florida A&M on a track scholarship. They had all been in this house together at one time, with his mother. Only a few minutes had passed when Old Man climbed the porch steps. Son waited, standing in the middle of the room. The door opened. Old Man looked at Son and dropped his onions on the floor. "Hey, old man, how you been doing?" "Save me, you got back." They didn't touch. They didn't know how. They fooled around with the onions, and each asked the other about his condition until Old Man said, "Come on in here. Let me fix you something to eat. Not much in here, but it ain't like I hadn't noticed. I ate something over to Soldier's. You over there? I wanted to hear about you before I came by," said Son. "Oh, I ain't dead, son. I ain't dead," he chuckled. "I see you ain't. Them money orders sure helped. You got them? Oh, yeah, every one. I had to use some of them, though." "Some of them? They were all for you. Why didn't you use them all?" "I couldn't do that. I didn't want to raise no suspicions. I just cast a few when I couldn't help it." "Shit, old man, don't tell me you still got some. They in there." He nodded toward one of the 2 bedrooms. "Porky in school, you know. I had to help her out, too." They went in the bedroom, and Old Man took a White Owl cigar box from under his bed and opened it. There was a thin pile of envelopes, bound by a rubber band. Some postal money orders held together with a paperclip, and a few $10 and $20 bills. 8 years of envelopes. "These were for you, old man, to take care of you." They did. But, you know, I didn't want to be going over there to the post office every month cashing them. It might set folks to talking and turn the law out on account of that other business. So I just took a few in every now and then. Quiet, you know." "Oh, man, you one crazy old man." "You been to Sutterfield yet?" "No, straight here." "Well, you know Sally Brown died here a while back." "They told me." "Be at peace." "Hope so." "She slept with a shotgun every night." "Huh, every night. Well, she burning up down there now, her and her nasty daughter. Don't say that, old man. Yeah, you right. Shouldn't rile the dead. But you know, I was more scared of Sally than the law. So was I. Law don't care about no dead colored girl, but Sally Brown, she slept with that shotgun every night waiting for you. Made my skin crinkle to walk past her. And she just about lived in church moaning. Stopped me from Vespers altogether. I couldn't sit there listening to her berate you. Can you feature that? Pray every Sunday and hold on to a shotgun every night. Where's the boy? Gone away from here, his folks, too. He get his eyebrows back? Never did. Guess his folks figured he couldn't hide nowhere around here looking like that. Sally was looking for him, too. I didn't see his face. All I saw was his asshole. That didn't have no eyebrows either, I bet. I should have made him some with a razor. They laughed together then. And an hour or so passed, while Son told what all he'd been doing for the last 8 years. It was almost 4 when Son said, I didn't come by myself. You with the woman? Yeah. Where is she? Over the Soldiers. Can she stay here? You all married? No, old man. Better take her to your Aunt Rosa's then. She won't like that. I can't help it. You be gone, I have to live here. Come on, old man. Go see your Aunt Rosa. She'd be mad anyway you don't stop by. Scripture don't say nothing about 2 single people sleeping under the same roof. Son was laughing. What you know about Scripture? I could have lied and said we were married, but you didn't lie. You told the truth, so you got to live by the truth. Oh, shit. That's right, shit. She's welcome in my house all day in the day. Bring her back so I can meet her. She's special, old man. So am I, son. So am I. All right. I'll go get her and bring her by. Cook up something. Then I'll take her by Aunt Rosa. That suit you? Suit me fine. Son stood up to go, and his father walked him to the door. When Son said, be right back, old man said, wait a minute. Can I ask you something? Sure, ask it. How come you never put no note or nothing in them envelopes? I kept on looking for a note. Son stopped. How hurried all those money order purchases had been. Most of the time, he sent a woman out to both buy and mail them. He'd done it as often as he could, and sometimes 5 would be sent from one city, and none from any place for 6 months. How hurried he'd been. I guess I didn't want nobody to read 'em and know where I was. But it was too lame an excuse to continue with. Is that why you kept the empty envelopes, too? Yeah. They had your handwriting on 'em, you know. You wrote it. That part, anyway. Franklin Green. You got a nice handwriting. Pretty. Like your mama. See you, old man. Go by Rosa. Tell her you coming. Jadine was squatting down in the middle of the road, the afternoon sun at her back. The children were happy to pose, and so were some of the younger women. Only the old folks refused to smile and glared into her camera as though looking at hell with the lid off. The men were enjoying the crease in her behind so clearly defined in the sunlight. Click, click. Jadine remembered her camera just before she thought she would go nuts, trying to keep a conversation going with Ellen and the neighbor women who came in to see Son's northern girl. They looked at her with outright admiration, each one saying, I was in Baltimore once, or my cousin, she lived in New York. They didn't ask her what they really wanted to know. Where did she know Son from, and how much did her boots cost? Jadine smiled, drank glasses of water, and tried to talk down home like Undine. But their worshipful stares and non-conversation made Son's absence seem much too long. She was getting annoyed when she remembered her camera. Now she was having a ball, photographing everybody. Soldier's yard was full. "Beautiful," she said. "Fantastic. Now, over here. Click, click. Hey, what'd you say your name was? Okay, Beatrice? Would you lean against that tree? Click, click. This way. Beautiful. Hold it. Hold it. Heaven. Click, 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 click." Son didn't mean to snatch it, just to end it somehow. Stop the crease, the sunlight, the click, click, click. And when he did, she looked at him with confusion at first, then with evolved anger. "What's the matter with you?" It wasn't nice to snatch the camera and then have to tell her about the sleeping arrangements. It wasn't nice. Not nice at all. He took her to Old Man's, and after supper there to Rosa's. Drake and Soldier picked them up and drove them to a joint in Ponce called Night Moves, where there was live music, barbecue sandwiches, and unrestrained dancing under 4 blue lights that neither flashed or strobed. They even managed some snatch in the car, Jadine under the impression that nobody knew, he aware that everybody did. The back seat turned her volume up, but the beer and the bad whiskey made her so sleepy there was no problem when he left her at Rosa's. She slept like a boulder for 3 hours, then woke, missing him, and suffocating in that little bedroom without windows. She sat up naked, for she never wore nightgowns, and held her shoulders. The room had a door to the living room, and one that opened to the backyard. She opened the latter, and looked out into the blackest nothing she had ever seen. Blacker and bleaker than Ile de Chevalier, and loud. Loud with the presence of plants and field life. If she was wanting air, there wasn't any. Not possible, she thought, for anything to be this black. Maybe if she stood there long enough, light would come from somewhere, and she could see shadows, the outline of something, a bush, a tree. A line between earth and sky, a heavier darkness to show where this very house stopped and space began. She remembered the blackness she saw when Son told her to close her eyes and to put a star in it. That would be the only way it would get there, she thought, for the world in the direction of the sky, in that place where the sky ought to be, was starless. Haze, she guessed. There must be haze in the sky. Otherwise, there would be a moon, at the least. The loudness of the plants was not audible, but it was strong nonetheless. She might as well have been in a cave, a grave, the dark womb of the earth, suffocating with the sound of plant life moving, but deprived of its sight. She could see nothing, and couldn't remember what she had seen when it was daylight. A movement behind made her jump and turn around. Rosa was standing in the inner doorway, lit from behind by a lamp. "Anything the matter? I heard you moving around." Jadine closed the back door. The lamplight from the other door was weak, but it was healthy enough to spotlight her nakedness. Rosa gazed down Jadine's body with a small bowing of her head and then up again. Her eyes traveled slowly, moving like one of those growing plants Jadine couldn't see, but whose presence was cracking loud. "Why didn't you tell me you didn't have no night clothes? I got something I let you have," Rosa said. I forgot," said Jadine. "I forgot to bring anything. I'll get you something." When Rosa came back, Jadine was in bed. Rosa handed her a kind of slip, wrinkled but clean-smelling. "You all right, daughter?" "Oh, I'm fine. I just got too warm and wanted some air," Jadine answered. "This used to be a porch. I made it an extra room, but it does heat up. I didn't feel like buying no windows." "Can you leave the back door open?" asked Jadine. "I wouldn't advise it. Anything at all might come in here out those trees. I got a little old electric fan I'll get you." No, don't bother." "You sure?" "Yes." "It's beat up, but it stirs the air around." "It's okay." "Well, I'll leave this here door open." Rosa propped a wooden slat-back chair against the inner door. "Sorry," she said. That gown ain't much, but it'll cover you." "Thanks," said Jadine. But it didn't cover her. She lay down in the slip under the sheet, and her nakedness before Rosa lay down with her. No man had made her feel that naked, that unclothed. Leerers, lovers, doctors, artists, none of them had made her feel exposed. More than exposed. Obscene. God. Elo. They were leaving Sunday. Surely she could get through a Sunday, and then she and Son would be back on the train holding hands, and then on the airplane, playing with each other under the Delta Airlines blanket, their faces serene as passengers, their hands devious and directed. She fell asleep on that thought, and woke at 10:30 with Rosa's fingertips tapping her on the shoulder. "Son's in there," she said. "Y'all gonna eat with me, ain't you?" Jadine got up and dressed quickly. He was sitting at the table looking more beautiful than after the first haircut on Ile de Chevalier, more beautiful than when he stood at the piano with his coat over his shoulder and she saw savannas in his face, more beautiful than on the beach when he touched her foot, than when he opened the door to his room at the Hilton. She wanted to sit in his lap, but Drake and Soldier were at the table too, so she just walked over and put her hand on his head. He smiled up at her and kissed the palm of her other hand. Drake and Soldier looked bathed and glittery. They beamed at Son with the same adoration she did, but they didn't compete. They sat back and enjoyed his presence and his prize woman. They looked at him with love, and looked at her like she was a Cadillac he had won, or stolen, or even bought for all they knew. "You all getting hitched?" Soldier asked. They were alone in the house while Son and Drake drove Rosa to church. "I guess so," Jadine answered. "We haven't talked about it." "He's good. You ought to snatch him." She laughed. "Should I?" "Damn right. You don't, somebody else sure will. He was married before, you know." "I know." "Never should have married that woman. That Cheyenne. Everyone told him that, or tried to, but he did it anyway, to his grief and sorrow." "Was she pretty?" asked Jadine. She didn't want to ask it, but it seemed extremely important to know the answer. "No, I wouldn't say pretty. Not bad looking, mind, but nothing pretty." "He must have loved her, though." "That could be what it was." Soldier sounded as though there were some doubts. "No," he said, "she wasn't pretty. But you had to hand it to her, though. She had the best pussy in Florida, the absolute best." And he turned his eyes on Jadine, as if to say, "Now top that." It wasn't nice. Not nice at all. Son embarrassed her in the road with the camera. Rosa made her feel like a slut, and now Soldier was trying to make her feel like a virgin competing with... She didn't answer him, so he went on. "You ever been married?" "No," she said, and looked squarely in his face, thinking if he says, "Good-looking women like you ought to be able," she would smack him in the mouth. But all he said was, "Too bad," and that didn't seem definite enough to break his face for. "Any children?" "You ask too many questions," she said. "Anything you want to know about me, ask Son." Soldier smiled at that and shook his head. "Son don't talk about his women, and don't let nobody else talk about him either." "I'm glad of that," she said. "I ain't. Keeps him dumb. He wouldn't know a good woman from a snake, and he wouldn't let nobody point out the difference." "Can he tell the difference between a good man and a snake?" "Oh, yeah. Son knows people. He just gets confused when it comes to women. With most everything else, he thinks with his heart. But when it comes to women, he thinks with his dick. You know what I mean?" "Some people think with their mouths." "Yeah, I guess you're right about that." Soldier smiled. "But maybe it's better than not thinking at all." "How would you know?" she asked him. He laughed. "You a hot one, ain't you?" "Yes, I'm a hot one." "Yeah." He ran his fingers over the place on his head where his hair was thinning. "A hot one, all right, and a live one, too." "Believe it." She got up to pour herself more coffee. Soldier scanned her hips. "Can I ask you something?" What? Who's controlling it? Controlling what? The thing between you two. Who's in control? Nobody. We're together. Nobody controls anybody, she said. Good, he said. That's real good. Son, he don't like control. Makes him, wild-like. We don't have that kind of relationship. I don't like to be controlled either. But you like to have it, don't you? Not with him. Good. Good. Did Cheyenne have control? She sat down and stirred air into her coffee. Cheyenne? No. She didn't control nothing. At least not during the day. But good God, she sure did run the nights. He laughed, and then, when she didn't join in, he sobered quickly and asked, How long y'all planning to stay around? J. Dean repressed a smile. He'd lost and wanted her out of town. We're leaving today. Today? You can't leave today. Why not? Ernie Paul is coming. We called him up. He left from Montgomery already. Be here Monday. Soldier was alarmed. Who's Ernie Paul? He's one of us. Grew up with Son and Drake and me. He'd taken off work to come down and see Son and all of us. TKO, thought J. Dean. But she didn't hang up her gloves. When Son came back, she showed him the train schedule. One more night, baby, he said. I can't, not in that room, not alone. Come on. No, Son, not unless you stay with me. I can't do that. Then I'm leaving. I'm long past 14. Okay, look, after church, when Rosa gets back, we'll go for a ride. Son, listen now. Let me show you this country. Bring your camera. Then tonight, you go back to Rosa's. Son, wait. Leave the back door open. I'll come in and stay with you all night. And in the morning, I'll go around the front like I just got there. You promise? I promise. Paleolithic, she thought. I am stuck here with a pack of Neanderthals who think sex is dirty or strange or something, and he is standing here, almost 30 years old, doing it too. Stupid. Stupid, she said aloud. I know, but that's the way they are. What do you want me to do? You think anything we do is going to change them? I want us to be honest. Can't we be gentle first and honest later? Accommodating beyond all belief. Because it was his hometown and his people, she supposed. She photographed everything during the ride until she was out of film. They found sheds and orchards to make love in, and an open window of a schoolhouse with a teacher's desk wide enough for two. They got back to Elo at 8 and stayed out as late as they could when night moves closed, then gave everybody a ride home. When J. Dean got to Rosa's, she put on the wrinkled slip to amuse him when he returned, unlatched the door, and got in the bed. Half an hour later, he was there. She had been listening carefully, so she heard the swing of the door. Son? Yeah. Hurry up. He hurried. Something was in his hand as he knelt by the bed. Leaves or fern or something. He made her take the slip off, and he brushed her all over with the fern, and she tried not to moan or laugh or cry out while he was saying, shh, shh. He undressed and climbed in. J. Dean opened her arms to this man, accustomed to the best pussy in Florida. It must have been that thought, put there by Soldier, that made her competitive, made her struggle to outdo Cheyenne and surpass her legendary gifts. She was thinking of her, whipped on by her, and that perhaps, plus the fact that she had left the door unlatched, and Son had opened it on its hinges, and after it was open on its hinges, it stayed wide open. But they had not noticed because they were paying attention only to each other. So that must have been why and how Cheyenne got in. And then the rest. Rosa and Therese and Son's dead mother, and Sally, Sarah, Sadie Brown, and Undine, and Soldier's wife, Ellen, and Francine from the mental institution, and her own dead mother, and even the woman in yellow. All there, crowding into the room. Some of them she didn't recognize, but they were all there, spoiling her lovemaking, taking away her sex like succubi, but not his. He fell asleep and didn't see the women in the room. And she didn't either, but they were there, crowding each other and watching her, pushing each other, nudging for space. They poured out of the dark like ants out of a hive. She shook Son, and he woke, saying, "Huh?" And she said, "Shouldn't you close the door?" Because she didn't want to say there were women in the room. "I can't see them, but this room is full of women." He said, "Yeah," and went back to sleep. She just lay there, too frightened to do it herself, for then she would have to walk through the crowd of women, standing in the pitch-dark room, whom she could not see, but would have to touch to get through them. And she felt them nudging each other for a better look at her, until finally being frightened was worse than anything they could do to her, so she got mad and sat up. Her voice was half as loud as her heart. "What do you want with me, goddammit?" They looked as though they had just been waiting for that question, and they each pulled out a breast and showed it to her. Jadine started to tremble. They stood around in the room, jostling each other gently, there wasn't much room, revealing one breast, and then two, and Jadine was shocked. This was not the dream of hats, for in that she was asleep, her eyes closed. Here she was wide awake, but in total darkness, looking at her own mother, for God's sake, and Nana Dean. "I have breasts too," she said, or thought, or willed. "I have breasts too." But they didn't believe her. They just held their own higher and pushed their own farther out and looked at her. All of them revealing both their breasts, except the woman in yellow. She did something more shocking. She stretched out a long arm and showed Jadine her 3 big eggs. It scared her so, she began to cry. Her back pressed hard into the wall, her right hand in a ball over her stomach. She shook Son and shook him some more. When he stirred and woke, she slammed her face into his shoulder, crying. "What is it? What's going on? Tell them to leave me alone." "What?" "Hold me. Jadine, shut the door. No, don't move. Hold me." "Those hats again?" "No." "What?" "Hold me." And he did. Till morning. Even while he slept, and she didn't, and the women finally went away, sighing, he didn't let go of her. Nobody was fooled by that little charade. Old Man guessed, and the men knew, and Rosa heard them as clear as the radio. She couldn't shake it. Not because Rosa fried eggs in the morning, or even the camera business, or Soldier's big mouth, or Old Man's phony biblical conversation, or the wrinkled slip in the stuffy room, but the possibility of more plant sounds in the cave, and the certainty of the night women kept her nervous. She couldn't shake it. The women in the night had killed the whole weekend. Elo was rotten and more boring than ever, a burnt-out place. There was no life there. Maybe a past, but definitely no future, and finally there was no interest. All that southern, small-town country romanticism was a lie, a joke, kept secret by people who couldn't function elsewhere. An excuse to fish. Ernie Paul could come to New York, faster even, if he flew. She needed air, and taxicabs, and conversation in a language she understood. She didn't want to have any more discussions in which the silences meant more than the words did. And no, she didn't want to party at night moves. "Son, please get me out of here." "You know I have things to do. Take me back, or I'll go back and you stay, or go. But, son, I'm not spending another night here." "I'll come to you again tonight. It doesn't help." "We'll stay out all night." "No, just get me to the train on time." Son closed the eyes inside his eyes to her for a moment. the way he had in the bedroom when he had come in without knocking, closed them without shutting them. She was making him choose. But he opened them again and asked her, "You love me?" "I love you," she said. "Will you be there when I get there?" "I'll be there. Of course I'll be there, waiting." "Ernie Paul has a car. I'll go back to Montgomery with him tomorrow and fly from there to New York." "Okay. No longer?" "No longer. I love you. I love you." They got to the train on time, but he didn't get to New York on time. 4 days passed, and he still hadn't come. Jadine was not disturbed. There was so much to do, errands and lunches and hair appointments and jobs. She had to call Dawn to see if she was coming back as planned. Did she have to find another place? On the 5th day, she was feeling orphaned again. He could have called. She imagined him carousing with Ernie Paul and Solder. Then another weekend rolled by and still no son. Apparently, he knew how to call Ernie Paul, but not how to call her. She thought of calling Elo. There was a phone in Night Moves, but she couldn't remember whether she'd seen one in any of the houses. Now she was biting mad at his carelessness, his indifference. Then she got desperate. In her heart, she knew he would come sometime, and that he would have either a good excuse or no excuse at all, but she knew that he would come. The desperation came from the sense she had of his being down there with all those women, with their breasts and eggs, the bitches. All the women in his life and in hers were down there. Well, not all the women in her life. Dawn wasn't there, and neither was Aisha, or Felicite, or Betty. They wouldn't have done that to her anyway. They were her friends. They were like her. Not like old Cheyenne, with the statewide pussy, or Rosa, with the witness eyes, or Nana Dean, with the tight-fisted braids looking sorrowful at the kitchen table and accusatory in that room. Not like Francine, attacked by dogs and driven crazy, or even like her own mother. How could you, Mama? How could you be with them? You left me. You died. You didn't care enough about me to stay alive. You knew Daddy was gone, and you went too. But she had rerun that movie so many times that Zaz was gone, leaving only Technique to admire. Of course her mother was with them, showing her boobs. Of course she would be there. But what made them think they could all get together to do that to her? They didn't even know each other. What did they have in common, even, besides the breasts? She had breasts. So did Dawn, and Aisha, and Felicite, and Betty. But she couldn't shake it, and it kept her angry. And the anger was good for the photographers, and the agency, and the telephone company, and the apartment managers. Everybody took notice and got out of the way. Dawn said May 15. She would be back then. Jadine asked around about another sublet and found 2. One, a house for 1 month, June. Another, an apartment for 6 months, but it was way uptown. Then a loft she could share for 2 weeks and keep for the summer. Every night she went to bed too exhausted to worry. Only on waking did it come back, fresher each time, heavier, till finally she sat with a glass of grapefruit juice in her hand in the morning, and since she couldn't shake it, she decided to reel it in. Cut off its head, slice it open, and see what lay in its belly. The women had looked awful to her. Onion heels, pot bellies, hair surrendered to rags and braids, and the breasts they thrust at her like weapons were soft, loose bags, closed at the tip with a brunette eye. Then the slithery black arm of the woman in yellow, stretching 12 feet, 15 toward her, and the fingers that fingered eggs. It hurt. And part of the hurt was in having the vision at all, at being the helpless victim of a dream that chose you. Some was the frontal sorrow of being publicly humiliated by those you had loved or thought kindly toward. A little bitty hurt that was always gleaming when you looked at it, so you covered it with a lid until the next time. But most of the hurt was dread. The night women were not merely against her, and her alone, not him. Not merely looking superior over their sagging breasts and folded stomachs, they seemed somehow in agreement with each other about her, and were all out to get her, tie her, bind her. Grab the person she had worked hard to become and choke it off with their soft, loose tits. Jadine sipped the grapefruit juice. Its clean, light acid dissolved the morning cloud from her tongue. No, Rosa, I'm not your daughter, and he's not your son.
This ends side 1 of cassette 8. Please turn the cassette over and start side 2 at the same point.